Wanna talk? So let's talk. Hey, talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Talk to Solomon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Stan Solomon. I'm the host.
I'm the co-host, Chief Steve.
Former Police Chief Steve Davis co-hosting, and from places far afield, Brent Johnson joins us as a co-host. Brent, how are you?
Brent's doing just fine. I'm excited to actually hear your voices, Steve and Stan. I'm looking forward to an exciting show.
Well, we're going to have a lot of good things happen. Now, joining us is my friend Robert Peters. Bob Peters is an attorney, an activist, a person that has his finger on the pulse of what's happening, and we're going to talk a bit about politics and the media. Bob, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back.
It's always our pleasure. Now, let me start with what I think is one of many major stories that aren't stories, and I'm not sure why, but I think you can help us with that, Bob. The Obama campaign last time around got millions, tens of millions of dollars, maybe even $100 million, and they got it in a way that no one else has done because you're not allowed to do it. That is, taking the money first, and after the fact, checking to see, possibly, maybe, if it came from a legal source. Well, they're doing it again this time, and they've been caught, literally caught. They're taking donations that they shouldn't be taking. I'll just put it that way, because they're coming from foreigners. Have you heard about this story?
No, but to the extent that some department of government should be responsible for taking action against such things if they're happening, obviously Obama he's in control of the government agencies. Probably every government agency, every major one, is headed by an Obama appointee. So what surprised me that, whether it's the IRS or the Federal Election Commission, whoever it would be, if they're headed by someone that Obama has appointed, there's a likelihood they would, turn their backs on it or just kind of see no evil.
Well, the Federal Election Commission allegedly is a bipartisan, equal representation, protect the system kind of thing. But when Obama came around the first time, he wasn't in charge. They weren't his appointees. And they didn't say anything then, and they're not saying anything now, and the media's not covering it. The story that I have is in the New York Post, so you can say, all right, someone covered it, but the fact is they ran tests, and 16-1, the Obama campaign has been taking questionable contributions, where of those same 16, they took them all, and the Romney campaign turned back 15 out of the 16, saying they didn't pass the rules. I just think it's an example of how we have media that is complicit and not prejudiced to one side versus the other. They're complicit in destroying the underpinnings of our system.
Well, I worked at an organization that fought pornography and the sex, vulgarity, violence in the media for 27 years, and that was our focus. But as the years went by, I became very much aware of another problem in mainstream media, whether it's the news media or entertainment, which is a very distinct bias. I mean, there's a difference, between saying bad, filthy words during the family hour versus purposefully promoting a certain perspective on life during the family hour. And, our focus was always the dirty words and the sex and, violence and things like that. But there's just no question that whether we're talking about the mainstream news media or the mainstream entertainment media, there is still a very distinct bias on the left. Now, thankfully, it's changed somewhat. In good measure because of the internet, the Fox News channel has also done a great job. And talk radio, I don't quite remember, not too many decades ago or years ago, I mean, virtually every newspaper was left of center. The entire television industry was left of center, and so was there wasn't much talk radio. It was news, and that was controlled by people left of center. So basically, you had a media that was 80 to 90% one-sided. That today you have more voices on the right, but in my opinion, most media is still biased toward the Democratic Party, toward the liberal ethic.
I think that's well said. Chief?
Well, Bob's made some really good points, but I want to just point out that there is no mainstream news media. It's a mainstream propaganda agenda, and since the left is willing to lie, cheat, steal, or murder to get their way, ignoring or changing the facts by the propaganda machine is easy for them.
Brent?
Well, I'm of the opinion that people in the media know the power that they have. And I think, on both sides of the political spectrum, there are people who have some integrity and, who attempt to be objective, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for everyone who has I sometimes wonder, how could a newspaper, I can understand a newspaper being biased in its editorial page. In one sense, it has the right to be biased. But how can the New York Times and just about every other newspaper not only be biased on the editorial page, but rarely allow the opposing side to be heard in the op-ed page? But, there are exceptions. But generally speaking, I think it's safe to say, whether it's right or left, the objectivity and fairness is not what really governs our nation's news media. Certainly doesn't govern the entertainment media. But, the liberals happen to be in control, and therefore the bias is more obvious from them.
Well said. Brent?
A couple of things. Firstly, I want to remind you it's the Democrat Party, not the Democratic Party. That is propaganda. It leads people to believe that somehow that party is more democratic than the Republican Party, which it probably is not. But is the Democrat Party. We don't want to feed the propaganda by promoting it. My main comment is that this is plain no accountability. Nobody in government is willing to say, it's a crime to do this. If you do it, you go to jail. Nobody's willing to do that. If you had serious consequences, I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican, if you break the federal election rules, you go to jail. Not only that, we lien half of your property. So it becomes part of the asset of the government. How about that? That would disincentivize this kind of thug behavior. The reason it happens, same thing with the media. The media is absolutely colluding. The political parties are absolutely colluding. The White House and executive branch is absolutely colluding with the legislative and the judicial branch. There's no question about that, and we were warned about that. And the people are not doing their duties. The people are not standing up and saying, that's it. No, if you won't prosecute them, we'll start picking them up off the road, put them into a private van, whisk them off to some private land, hold a summary trial with 12 men and women, and if they're found guilty, execute sentence on them. Now that's what the Founding Fathers did, and that established principles of justice and rule of law. And to expect you're going to get justice and rule of law without that is naive at best and crazy at worst.
Well, Brent, you bring up a good point. Bob, go ahead and comment.
Well, one thing that the Federal Election Commission, to the extent that it is a bipartisan commission, interestingly, you've got, I would assume that many of the Republican appointees are somewhat in the camp that there shouldn't be any restrictions on political funding. So if they follow their conscience, whether it's Republican or Democrat, they are really going to be reluctant to crack down on political campaign spending, because essentially they don't think there should be any restrictions on political campaign funding. Now, I don't know that, I hate to, say something so horrible, but my own personal opinion is that the Democratic members would not have much of a problem cracking down on Republican violations and while ignoring the Democratic Party. But, you basically with... in this case, if you have the Democrats breaking the federal election law, of course the Democratic members of the commission are going to look the other way because they're biased. And certainly some of the Republican members of that commission are going to look the other way because they honestly feel there shouldn't be any restrictions on political spending. But, I tell you, I worked with the FCC for a long time, and I'm telling you, one of the, I'm dawned on me, this broadcast indecency issue that's come up that, why is it that Congress passes laws and then lets government agencies decide essentially to ignore these laws. It's the job of a government agency
That's the point.
to carry out the law. But they do it all the time, whether it's the IRS or the Federal Election Commission or the Justice Department or the FCC. They simply ignore the law and do what they want. But boy, on that score, it's not Republican versus Democrat.
Go ahead, Brent.
No, it isn't, and that's my point. That's my point, that the Democrats will not prosecute the Republicans because there, but for the grace of God, go I. If I prosecute the Republicans, then when they have the majority, they'll prosecute me, and vice versa. That's what I mean by collusion. And there is nobody outside government. Basically, what we've got is we've got a situation where, considering the government is the fox, we are telling the fox to guard the hen house, and we're expecting them to do it, which is pretty crazy. You know, that's the whole point. The American people are supposed to be the final arbiters of the law. They have been terribly remiss and terribly waning in their duty under the Declaration of Independence and duty to enforce the Constitution for the United States. And unless that changes, none of this will happen. You can vote in somebody new, it won't change. You can have different people in Congress, different party, it won't change. Because they have no incentive to hold each other to the rule of law. They get away with it. Why should they hold each other to the rule of law and ruin that?
You bring up a good point, Brent, and I'm going to ask the Chief to discuss it, but the reality is if we the people are remiss, if we the people are passive, if we the people are not going to hold their quote-unquote feet to the fire either figuratively or literally, then yes, they will do what they choose to do.
Well, Brent and Bob have both made some really great points, and I want to just say that the Founding Fathers were totally against the mob rule. They did not want mobs of people going out and arresting people and having their own trials. And in the Constitution, everyone is entitled to the Fourth and Fifth Amendments to the Constitution. There's an orderly process for this. But Bob made a good point in that right now there is not really a mechanism to carry out these arrests. So none of us can make an arrest. No one in Congress that I know can make an arrest. It takes either a police officer of some level and or a prosecutor to enact that arrest. And then you have to abide by the rules of court, the evidentiary rules, and those other things that come into play. So but the process is stymied now because, as Bob has said, all of these policemen and prosecutors that would enforce these laws are controlled by Barack Obama.
Well, certainly at the
well,
federal
Steve,
level.
let me comment if I may, because that's an important point you just brought up. In reality, during the American Revolution, this is exactly what they did. They realized that the British soldiers were not following any laws. The king was changing the rules to suit his. I mean, it was the same thing. It just was a king instead of a president. And what they did was they got together an armed militia.
It was a war.
And they would take people and they would say, you get out of town, you get out of town, or we will tar you. Never mind the feds. And they threw these corrupt officials out of town. Now, I'm suggesting we are at that same point. We do not have a rule of law here. And there's been so many examples of it. And I'm a peaceful guy. I don't want to have a fight with the government, but I don't see any other way to reclaim our liberty and reclaim a country that operates under the rule of law.
All right, I'm going to get back to our topic because Bob's here to talk about what we are seeing in the media that is disingenuous or downright dishonest. And speaking, when you say disingenuous, dishonest, you can throw in a few other descriptive words. Louis Farrakhan comes to mind, and Louis Farrakhan said, Jews own the Federal Reserve, Hollywood, Congress, and Obama. Now, I'm sure that President Obama would take some exception to that, but I think there's some confusion between Jews and liberals, because a circumcised liberal might be a Jew, but he's a liberal first and a Jew second, if at all. Bob, can you comment on that?
Well, I tell you one thing, I just step back, we're talking about the people, and the rule of law. And, you take a look at, there are three things that make the people's role less and less effective. One is, I think, some of our founding fathers said that, for a democracy to work, you have to have, in effect, a moral people. I think our founding fathers felt that religion was very important to morality. But the bottom line is, if a democracy is going to work, you have to have people with right values. And increasingly, more and more American people, whether left or right, don't have the right values. And I'm not just talking politics here. Second thing is that, I tell you, as government becomes bigger and bigger, more people, in effect, are becoming dependent on the government, and they will do anything that anything that will continue the payouts to come. And oh, good Lord, I've got and involvement. For whatever the reasons, more and more of the American people are simply disengaging from the political process. They're too busy watching, Boo Boo or whatever that 7-year-old, charming little bowl of whatever it is, and this and that, and they have these surveys, and they ask people, name one Supreme Court justice. Can you tell me how many Supreme Court justices there are? Do you know the 3 different branches of government? Whatever the basic, simple questions of how a democracy works, and close to half of the people or whatever it is couldn't. They're literally idiots when it comes to the political process. So we have ignorance and uninvolvement, a growing number of people who are being bought out by government. That's Romney's 47%, or at least some of them, not all. And then the basic moral breakdown of the American people, which is that more and more we don't make the right decisions about who to elect and who to get out of office and what legislation to support and what not. So a big part of our checks and balances, which should be the American people, we are the source of government. We just keep, losing control and or exercising our influence in a way that causes more problems than good.
Well said. Again,
the topic, but
it is and it isn't. In that, I believe that we are. First of all, I think we're getting more people involved instead of less. I think that the Tea Party movement, among others, people are getting much more involved in the process. I think that has shown itself in the 2010. It has shown itself in all of the information and all of the creations and all of the movements and all of the meetings and all the things that have happened since before and since the 2010 election. And I think it will show today. I do think, though, we're seeing an overt attempt by media to not tell us all the truth, but in fact to put out lies. And I think in that debate where Candy Crawley was the moderator was a perfect example. I'll start with you, Chief.
Well, I want to first of all thank Bob for bringing up religion in our conversation, because I was not going there and I should have. But for 2 reasons. First of all, history will show us that nations they prosper wherever Christianity thrives. And the second thing is, I want to tell you something. I was a little irritated at you earlier because I saw the reading list and I had to watch a Farrakhan video, and I was really kind of PO'd about that. But in the video, in this story we're doing right now, also Farrakhan was mocking Obama and said that Obama's policies were silly, and that now Obama has egg on his face because now Egypt is controlled by the Islamic Brotherhood. I thought that was pretty humorous.
Well, yeah, especially coming from a black Muslim like Farrakhan.
Candy Crowley was not a moderator. She was a participant in the debate. And so far, in my opinion, Mitt Romney is, at every debate, it's been 2 against 1. Mitt Romney was the one.
Well, I think in the first debate and the last debate, there wasn't help for Obama. In the vice presidential debate and in the Candy Crawley town hall debate, it was, in fact, 2 against 1. Bob, we just have a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure that we give you an opportunity.
Comments, Dan.
Go ahead, Brett.
Dan. This is a very quick comment. Actually, 2 quick comments. One is I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we are not and never have a democracy. We are a constitutional republic that operates under democratic principles. In a democracy, two wolves and a sheep decide what to eat for dinner.
That's right.
And the founding fathers found the principle of democracy repugnant to a free society. Second comment is, I was raised in a Jewish family, and Stan will tell you that I'm certainly not blindly going and supporting Israel or any of this stuff. So, I'm an independent thinker and I'm a patriot. I think about the principles of truth and justice and liberty. And I don't really care if Jews own the banks. What I care about is what they do with power they have as owners of the banks. I don't care if a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim goes and takes ownership of a bank and abuses the people and tries to wipe them out in whatever way. I'll hold that person accountable regardless of his religious affiliation.
Right. Well, I think that's well said. And the point I tried to make is the people who do terribly wrong things They want to blame it on their faith, whether it's the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, or whatever other faith, the Hindu faith. I promise you, if you're following the faith correctly, you're not doing those things. And so I am offended when you say Jews promote something when, in fact, Judaism doesn't promote that. And as I'm sure Muslims are offended when you say Islam promotes something when Islam, in fact, doesn't promote that, or Hindu or Christian or Seventh-day Adventist or Catholicism or whatever it might be.
Let them be known by their deeds. Let them be known by their acts.
Exactly. All right. Now, Bob, let me ask you to summarize here your view of the quote-unquote mainstream media, the major newspapers, the major networks. Is there any positive sign there, or do you feel that, as has been happening, we just need for a way to phase them out of influence?
Oh, I think the positive. I mean, it's a drawback, and you know, there was some virtue back in the, you know, let's say the '60s when let's say the network television news departments were supposed to be independent and they weren't expected to make a profit. They were supposed to keep the people informed, and then, you know, to a significant extent they did, even though I think even back then there was a sort of a liberal bias. But, you know, I mean, one of the downsides of the media today is that as it becomes more and more fractured, more and more of it becomes less accountable and more prone to distortion, mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, the good side of what's happening today in the media is that, you know, and thanks in good measure to, and I have my bones to pick with the Fox News Channel, but Fox News Channel, talk radio, and the Internet, you know, have, to some extent, democratized the flow of information in quote-unquote media. I'll tell you, you know, as I was doing a little bit of thinking about this conversation or our time together tonight, I thought, you know, we're going to talk about bias. We can't leave out academia, because clearly one of the things that's happening in our society is that younger people are just getting more and more liberal. You know, it seemed for a short while some younger people were actually, you know, thinking for themselves. But the latest surveys that I've seen is that they just more and more think exactly the way the Democratic Party wants them to think. And I think a huge part of that is not the media, it's academia. And to some extent, high school, most assuredly higher education. So if we're going to talk about bias in our system, institutional bias, we can no longer just talk about the media, because the media is becoming more democratized. I just killed the word, I'm sure. But academia is still 90% plus in the hands of those who think and vote Democratic.
And that's why we're seeing...
And they're determining our future as a nation.
But that's why we're seeing people moving away from traditional quote-unquote education, because they don't want to be a part of that. Those people have cut off their nose to spite their face. Bob, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it always when you're on the show, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks for having me. Good night.
My pleasure. And folks, we have a lot of interesting guests coming tonight. Next is Ben Barrett, who's a former member of Congress, and we're going to talk about the whole Libyan situation. By the way, Romney's numbers as a challenger are the best since 1968. No challenger with his poll numbers has ever lost. And he's not going to lose this election either. We'll be right back. This is Talk to Solomon. You have a computer, if you're alive today, which means you have a hard drive, which means it's going to break down. Mosey, the backup people, for thousands, for Stan, for thousands of people, for tens of thousands of people, is simply common sense. You go to cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey, the backup people, and sign up. It's just a few dollars a month. Let me tell you something. We had a break-in. They stole our whole computer. You know what? When they take the computer, you can't recover anything, but we had Mosey. We had the backup. We were able to restore everything simply by buying another computer. cpnlive.com, click on the icon for Mosey to Backup People, and give yourself common sense, peace of mind, great value, the best thing you've ever done. Sooner or later, it's going to be. Mosey, the Backup People. I like to eat. Do you like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com. Check it out. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item, and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. We absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule. Let me ask you a question. Do you like being sick? I have in my hand an incredible product. It's called TR10 Supercolloidal Silver. TR10 stands for a trace to the negative 10th power. The particles in this silver product are 6 to 8 angstroms, 6 to 8 10 billionths of a meter. Now listen to me. Silver has been the magic bullet for all of human existence. The Egyptians used silver instruments. We use silverware. They put silver in your teeth because nothing can grow on silver. Silver will kill anything but liberalism. I'm working on that. This product, you go to cpnlive.com, buy 1 quart of this product. It will last you for a very long time. Anytime you feel like you've been exposed to something bad, take some of this product, spray it in your mouth, or take a little bit and gargle it, swallow it. It will kill any pathogen. The average antibiotic kills 10 to 20 different pathogens. This product will kill 700 plus. Do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, do your doctor a favor. He's tired of seeing you. Get Supercolloidal Silver. Go to cpnlive.com, order the product. It's $29.95 plus shipping. I think it's $39.95 delivered any place in America right to your door. It's worth 10 times that. Check it out. If you're not 100% happy, just return it and we'll give you your money back.